Normally, I've got to say, you're not one of the people that goes, this is all outrageous, you're all horrible to us, blah, blah, blah. You're normally very fair-minded about all the many transgender issues which have come up in the last year or so. On this one, you're emphatic, though. You believe that misgendering a transgender person is a hate crime. Why?
Absolutely. Well, gender is a protected characteristic just as much as race, religion or sexuality. And if somebody took a swipe at any of those, there would be a similar reaction. And to a transgender person, their identity is what they've fought for. Every day you go out in the world and you have to justify yourself in some way. And I'll give you this example. Yes, it does seem innocuous. I've been listening this morning about, accidentally calling somebody he or she, which to most people, it's irrelevant. You just brush it off. But if I give you this quick analogy, if I left a banana, say, on your doorstep, Piers, you'd wake up in the morning and you'd think it was a little bit weird, but you would think nothing more of it. But if it was a black family and they woke up and they opened the door and found a banana on their doorstep, it has a different meaning.
I agree. But, Toby, if we start prosecuting people for, in many cases, completely inadvertently, perhaps, misgendering somebody, Twitter now will suspend your account if you do that, even if it's not seen to be deliberate or malicious. Where is that taking us?
Well, I agree. I mean, it's one of the difficulties with making misgendering a hate crime is sometimes it can be a complete accident. The Office for the Schools Commissioner last year sent a form to schools which included 24 different types of gender. Are you going to prosecute people for not being able to remember all 24 types? Some people are gender fluid. Their genders change.
Well, what do we do about Sam
Smith?
Right, so Sam Smith came out yesterday, the singer, and he said that he now believes he's male and female, born to a biological male body, but now believes he self-identifies as male and female. Now, this raises all sorts of complexities, India, not least of which he's accepted a numerous number of awards for male-only categories. Yes. Does he continue to accept them? Should he hand the other ones back? Should he now enter female categories? Does it depend what mood he's in? People find it very confusing, this. And if you call Sam Smith he today, and he's identifying today as a female, is it a hate crime? But if tomorrow he identifies as male because he's gender fluid, does it cease to be a hate crime? Or, where do you go with this?
Gender fluid, I get really confused on it as well. But I think it's really simple at the end of the day. If somebody identifies as whatever, it's a matter for them. And we're talking about one letter here, an S, either it's a she or a he. Is it such a big deal if somebody asks on a particular day to be addressed in that way that you give them?
I think a lot of people accept that.
Yeah.
What they are struggling with is it a crime? Is it a crime if actually you use the wrong pronoun? And even if you do it because you're confused about gender fluidity, you're confused about transitioning, is it a crime that needs investigating by the police?
Well, it's not a crime if it's accidental, which does happen, and transgender people are aware that that can happen.
But the difficulty in here is the police are expected to decide whether it's accidental or not.
No.
In 2016, the police interviewed 3,300 people for saying something supposedly inappropriate on Twitter. Shouldn't they be focusing on knife crimes?
We're talking here about tweets and social media posts. Now, I don't know about you, Toby, but certainly when I do a tweet, I think it through, and then I type it, and then it goes on there. And I have the right to delete it as well.
Do you think the British police should be interviewing nearly 10 people every day, detaining and questioning them for things they've said which are supposedly offensive on Twitter, when they could be investigating burglary, theft,
Nobody is arguing
assault.
that something like knife crime is a priority. And you could put every police officer in the country devoted to looking at knife crime at the moment, but there would still be other crimes happening.
But, India, what about this, though? So in the papers today, a transgender woman called Katie Yeomans is demanding £2,500 compensation because rail staff called her sir. Now, apparently she's 6 foot tall, has short hair, doesn't wear makeup. So I would imagine it's a reasonably easy mistake for rail staff to make. And they're trying to be polite by saying sir or madam, depending on how they identify
but we don't know the context.
Well, we don't.
If it's happening once, then it's a mistake.
If it is that context, how can that be a matter for compensation? I mean, it's just a mistake, isn't it?
But is it a mistake? If it's happening once, I'm sure that the lady will accept that it's an error and somebody slipped up. But if it's repeated, then it's probably not. I mean, the case you're referring to earlier on, the two individuals, Susie Green, who I actually know, the amount of abuse she gets for running a transgender charity is insane. She gets trolled every single day.
OK, but I would say to that, India, this. I would say that I, for example, completely support people who transgender. I think I've always shown you
absolutely
complete respect, right? And support. And I would absolutely do that to anybody. Where I think the transgender community does itself a disservice is where they become too aggressive in asserting this kind of thing to the point where it involves the police and people being arrested and so on. I think it has the opposite effect to what they hope when they do that. It doesn't help the cause, it damages the cause. It makes everyone who's not transgender go, what is going on?
Piers, it is a serious issue for us, and as I say, it's just the same as giving a slur out to, in a racial context to a black person or an Asian person or about somebody's sexuality. And I would say to you, if you think it's so easy, spend a month living as the opposite sex and see how you would find it.
I don't think it's...
on a daily basis, you would get...
Toby, the devil's advocate question for you is this. India raises an interesting point. I mean, if you use the N-word against a black person in this country, if I did it on air now, I'd be fired, quite rightly, right? It would be deemed grotesquely offensive, right? And a form of hate crime, right? Actually, if it causes the same hurt to a transgender person to, let's say, deliberately misgender them. In other words, you know that you're going to hurt them and you still do it, right? If you do that, what is the difference, actually? I
think the difference is this, Piers, that when you use the N-word, when you call a gay person by the F-word, when you call a woman the B-word, there's no disputing that that is evidence of prejudice, of bigotry. But it could be that deliberately, but nonetheless, for perfectly respectable and legitimate political, philosophical or theological reasons, your point of view is that someone who is born a woman can't then become a man and vice versa. If that's your point of view, hold on, why should the state take sides in that issue? Why should the state prohibit you from thinking that?
But Toby, I also want to interject because in order to be protected from gender reassignment discrimination, you do not need to have undergone any specific treatment or surgery to change from your birth sex to your preferred gender. So you simply need to identify as a different gender.
So here's another problem.
And that raises the, you know, that it becomes
a broader
problem, doesn't it?
Facebook has over 70 different ways now. Here's my point, though. 70 different ways to self-identify
which is crazy.
Your gender. Some of which are things like two-spirit person. Now, if I don't call that person two-spirit, am I guilty of a hate crime?
But my question was going to be...
It's the same thing, isn't it?
OK, and what happens if you want to simply discuss the fact that you don't agree with the fact that somebody might identify as something different on a particular day? Is that then put you into legal hot water?
Well, the police seem uncertain about this. They, for instance, they contacted a 74-year-old grandmother earlier this year. She hadn't misgendered anyone. She hadn't said anything which anyone would regard...
That's not strictly true. Again, that's a repeated campaign on social media. If you look at the background of that story.
This 74-year-old woman had written, I don't think trans women are women. And she's a feminist. She's a feminist, and that is her point of view.
She might believe
and she got a telephone call from the police telling her to stop blogging about transgender issues. Now, the police shouldn't be doing that. That's the policing of thought crime, which is not the business of the police and not the business of the state. If someone takes that point of view, I mean, it's not my point of view, and I certainly wouldn't misgender anyone.
And India, let's bear in mind,
if that is someone's point of view, I don't think the police should be intervening to try and stop people from expressing
Well, especially, I would argue, India, when we have a situation in the Midlands at the moment at various schools where Muslim communities have stopped any form of gay sex education being discussed at school because they say they don't believe in homosexuality. Now, that's happening in this country. And I'm not seeing the police racing down and interviewing people under caution for what many would see as overt bigotry. So there's a double standard there, too. We have Caroline here who misgendered somebody and is the subject of police investigation. But you have Muslims in the Midlands who are very anti-gay people, refusing and campaigning and protesting successfully to have gay education removed from schools because they don't like it. And isn't that bigotry
And
to us?
Well, the police are wrong in that instance. But when you're saying that Caroline has misgendered, you're missing a word out repeatedly. This is an accident, and this is the crux of the matter here. Everyone accepts that mistakes can happen, but if you troll somebody... I mean, we're in a week here
I don't think she
where
was
mental
trolling anyone.
health is really, really relevant. It's hit the headlines. You know, people die because of problems with
to
mental
be fair
health
to Caroline,
issues.
what she
and if
said...
you troll people doing something that deliberately hurts,
what Caroline was saying,
then it's an offence.
Caroline believed that because the transgender girl concerned, this other woman's daughter, had not had any surgery to transition, she was questioning whether she was actually a girl by any technical description or not, simply because she'd held her hand up and said, I'm now...
Well, what business is it, Piers, of Caroline?
I think it's anyone's
But
business,
what business
to
is
challenge...
it of the state to say that she can't think
No,
that?
but if I said to you, Toby, I think that from now on you need to be defined as whatever, it's none of my business, it's a matter
No, but it wouldn't be a
But it's not the state's business if Caroline Farrow takes a different view for religious reasons.
It's a complicated issue. It's an interesting debate to have. Thank you both for coming in. We appreciate it.